All right, what's popping, party people? We are back in for another episode. We know we had to kind of comment on this topic right here. We've been out for a little bit, but the pundits of pugilism have to weigh in on the latest Tank Davis championship defense. This is your man, Professor Nims. I'm signing on for Boston Jared. Don't forget
What
the
up?
H. And we are sans two of the pugilists, but in an effort to be in front of the news cycle and make sure that we are, part of this conversation, we wanted to go ahead and um, bring you this episode. So with this said, we're just going to first just talk about this fight in general to kind of assess the performances of both of the fighters, talk about the decision. Was it a valid decision? And then we're going to kind of address the elephant in the room, kind of talk about the controversy that's surrounding it. But with that said, let's just talk about the fight in general. So, just for context, Gervonta Tank Davis was defending his WBA lightweight championship against Lamont Roach, who is a champion at super featherweight, who's actually coming up in weight, which was to the viewer's eyes, there might be a little bit of cognitive dissonance because this that was a big lightweight to me from the guy that I saw in the ring. The guy
Lamont Roach?
Lamont Rhodes, he did
That
he
motherfucker is massive. I'm like, yo,
he
how does this
he,
guy make
he filled
130
out
pounds?
well, like yeah. So he was so that was a big lightweight. We also want to talk about Tank Davis came in at 133 and a quarter pounds. I want to say he came in super light, but one thing I want to say is just physically wise, that was the best looking Tank that I've seen or whatnot. I thought his shoulders and back and all that. He even Tank doesn't cut up very easily or whatnot. He was even a little bit cut up for that fight. So I thought physically, I thought he looked good or
Didn't
whatnot.
help.
No, it didn't help. I mean, but like that's not a one-to-one, right? So it's just like the way that you look in front of the camera, like those muscles and cuts and stuff did not translate to a performance. But to me, but it is an indication of your conditioning and how serious that you did take that, going into the fight. I
That's
thought
true.
I thought that he looked well. I thought that after weighing in. And it wasn't even kind of rehydrating, but I think with Lamont, he didn't have to kind of shrink down his body as much and trying to meet the 130. So he was able to do that, but he filled out like well, and he already has the advantage. I think he's about 5'8". I think just kind of like just
Yeah,
eyeballing.
significantly taller than Tank, who's whatever, 5'4" or whatever he
Yeah,
is.
they list some 5'5", 5.5, and all that,
Yeah.
but
I've seen him. I've stood right next to Tank. He ain't 5'5". Yeah, he
so
ain't 5'5".
But Boston, let me throw it to you. Just give me your overall impressions of the fight. When did you think it was a good fight? Was it kind of
I
pleasing?
did. I thought the fight started off a little bit lackluster. It was a little bit slow. Because both guys are tactical boxers.
Absolutely.
Tank, is normally in there. They normally pick an opponent for him that's going to play to Tank's strengths, and
Mhm.
Tank is a counterpuncher. And Lamont Roach was not is not that, right. He's not some come forward guy
Mhm.
that's going to give a guy like Tank the chances that he's looking for. So the fight it started off a little bit slow. It was very tactical, but it heated up towards the middle rounds and definitely heated up towards the end.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Tank got outclassed, man. He's been spoon-fed, tailor-made opposition for the last several fights, and it's been to his disadvantage. I mean, his overall development is kind of uh,
It's
it showed
stunning.
in.
Yeah.
I don't want to say overall because I'm not in the gym with him, and he's been knocking out guys. Frank Martin not exactly doesn't fit that mold, right? Frank Martin is more of a technical
Mhm.
boxer. So there has been some exceptions to that, but yeah, this Lamont Roach, man, he bit off a little bit more than he could chew in Lamont Roach, man. That was a cherry pick gone wrong.
It
That was
was. And so
But
just
could
to
have
give
gone
it,
horribly wrong.
yeah, Tank was a 9-1 favorite in there, which is huge, right? So in that, so you to get back $100, you would have to bet 900 on Tank, and I think as an underdog, might be wrong, but I think that it had got even as high as to 16-1 underdog for Lamont Roach, meaning $100 bet would have got you $1,600. Well, it wouldn't have got you anything because it was a draw, and we'll kind of talk about that in a sense. But do you think that the previous experience that Lamont Roach had with fighting Tank and the amateurs, do you think that played into that?
No, no.
I
I
agree. Like
look,
I don't
look.
like every like pro most fighters like they're like they fight very differently. When you come into the pros, it's
Yeah,
more of a hurt business.
and it looked like they were kids when they fought. It wasn't like they fought, in the Olympic trials or something like that,
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
like how how Devin and
And Devin
Ryan
Garcia.
Garcia fought like
Yeah, yeah.
10 times over the course of many years. That is very, very different. That their amateur experience, Ryan's experience fighting Devin definitely played a factor in this fight, but not Lamont Roach's against Tank. From what I understand from the guys who I've talked to, and I wish Coach Dave was here because I know Coach Dave is he's on the inside with both of those camps. The footage I saw looked like those guys were kids, and from what I was told, they fought when they were kids. So no, I don't
Mm,
think that their amateur experience,
yeah.
I don't think that played into it. Maybe psychologically for Lamont Roach, who knows? Maybe that did, but tactically, I don't think that it did. I don't think it gave any
I think
Lamont
that's a
Roach any
great
kind of
point.
tactical advantage. No.
I think that's a great point, right? Because a lot of times there's this xenophobia, which is like the fear of the unknown, right? So like I don't know what this guy's gonna feel like or what his speed is going to do that if I've never been in the ring with him. It's different when you are watching it from the outside, but the fact that he was in there, so it might have just it would not giving him any tactical advantages, but just psychologically, it was just like, oh, I've been there. I mean, even though Tank is a kind of different fighter, but I think if anything, I would agree with you. I think there might have been some psychological benefits. And I'm not problem is I'm not trying to provide these excuses and stuff like that. I'm just trying to provide context for the fight. What do you make of Tank with Barry Hunter being his lead trainer and Calvin Ford not being the person that led his camp?
Uh, Man, that's a Coach Dave question, man. As you know, Coach Dave knows those guys. I don't know what to make of it. I'll be honest with you. I was so disinterested in the lead up to this fight that I didn't really bother to look into the whatever went into Tank's decision to include Barry Hunter. It's not something unusual. We've seen Barry Hunter in Tank's corner before. Off the top of my head, I know Barry Hunter was in the corner for the Mario Barrios fight,
Yeah,
and I think Barry Hunter may
but
have even been in the
not as a
corner for the
lead
Hector Luis
trainer
Garcia
though.
fight. You
Yeah,
said
not as a
what?
lead, but not as a lead. Just the first time he was a
Ah, that
lead
is the lead.
trainer.
That is the lead trainer. So I unfortunately, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I guess I can assume what anyone else might be able to assume, and it's that maybe Calvin Ford has been in part of Tank's professional development now since he was a child,
Yeah, yeah. I
right?
mean, he's almost it's not even almost. He's a father figure to him.
Right,
And
right, right. Eventually, having the same person, just like anything. Imagine having the same any kind of teacher. Imagine having your Pop Warner coach, as a 6 or 7 year old, and he's now your coach as a professional now, as a 30-year old.
yeah,
Eventually, that you need something a little bit different. I hope that it's nothing personal. I hope there hasn't been some sort of falling out, either professionally or personally. I hope that this was
or
just a
money
way
or
for
like
Tank to
business.
just,
Yeah,
you said
or
what?
or like even if it's business, like dealing with money, maybe you know what I'm
I
saying.
hope
Like
it's not
hopefully
that. And
it's not any
you
of
know,
that stuff.
I'm not a tank. I'm definitely not a tank fan, but still, I don't, you don't like to see stuff like that happen. I don't want to see stuff. I don't want that to happen, to Calvin Ford.
Mhm.
He seemed like a good guy, stand-up guy to me. But yeah, I hope that the inclusion of Barry Hunter was just to have a different voice in the corner. Um, you see it with Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford has a lead trainer and a co-trainer. Bomac's still the lead, but he has other guys. We saw it recently in the David Morrell fight. David Morrell has Ronnie Shields as the lead. He has Bob Santos, which I did not know, as the
Mhm.
co-lead. So this is something that's becoming more and more of a norm. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I
and I,
hope it wasn't anything negative that led to Calvin Ford being demoted, so to speak.
demoted. Yeah.
I hope it wasn't that. I hope it was just, hey, let's bring in a different voice in here, someone with a different
Mhm.
opinion.
That's interesting, right? Because a lot of people would think if it's not broke, why try to fix it? One, I've got two comments about it. One is that um, I I had I had a fear that it was going to be this kind of chaotic corner where you've just got these competing voices and stuff, which I don't like. But it's funny because not I'm just trying to get not trying to bring in like racing, but like with a lot of Hispanic corners, those corners seem sometimes chaotic to me. They'll just
Yeah,
be
because
like,
the father is there. That's
yeah, and it'll be
always the
like
father.
so
The
much,
father's
and
always
like
there.
they seem like so like, and I'm like, how is your fighter able to even calm down or take in any of this information and stuff like? And I'm saying it's a
Yeah,
bad thing, but a lot of times I'm just kind of like that seems like a chaotic corner. I didn't see that in this. I thought that
yeah,
people were respectful in letting Barry Hunter be one of the main voices. But Calvin Ford was giving his information, giving his advice and stuff like that. But he didn't try to kind of like supersede what Barry Hunter was doing. And the second point I want to add was there was some tension in the corner between Calvin Ford and Devontae Davis. Like I don't know if you recall the moment, but it was a point where Davis, Tank Davis was just like, "You're not listening to me." Like he was trying to like tell him something. Like if you're going back and watching, he was just like, "You're not listening to me." Like he was like trying to get a point across and stuff. He was like,
that's what Calvin was saying to Tank, or Tank
"No,
was
no."
saying that.
Tank was saying to Calvin, so like he was trying to
Okay,
give
all right.
advice. He was just like, "No, no, you're not hearing me. You're not listening." And he snapped at him.
That's not good. So I was at Park, right, and they did have the audio on, but I was talking shit to people on both sides of me. I was going back and forth with people, so I did miss some of the in between the rounds
Yeah,
stuff.
he did. So
But
he
that's it.
definitely,
That's
yeah.
interesting. That's
It
interesting.
was. So if you
Okay.
go back and watch, he snapped at him. Calvin handled it well, but definitely there was like there was no what I'm saying, like there was you can see that Barry Hunter was showing a little for like he was trying to motivate him and kind of talk about some things, but he never snapped at him or did that, but he definitely snapped at Calvin Ford, which kind of makes if this kind of like a father figure, this might have been something like different. And so, just in a bit of a transition, because I didn't really get my takes on the fight, so I thought it was an entertaining fight. Typically with Tank Davis, those first few rounds are just gonna be just you're gonna be just downloading like data, and particularly when you have two tacticians like Roach and Davis, that's what it's gonna be. I didn't like the commentary around it. Like I thought it was just if you can't find something good to talk about, like just talk about the footwork or some of the challenges. But they just kept on saying like, "Nah, don't worry. Like this looks boring or bad like right now, but you know how take fights end."
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
were
yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
like they just kept on like bring. I'm like, just shut up and commentate on the fight. Like
Right,
Tank
right.
Davis is not somebody that rushes out there. in the first round, and Mike Tyson and gets him out there, and I'm just like, just let the fight go. But they were almost apologetic in kind of like saying like for like the lack of
Yeah,
action and stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
No, this
Well,
was this
keep in
was
mind
legit.
also, if you didn't watch the undercard, the undercards were
Yeah,
action packed. I mean, even Sandor Martin, Albert Puello, which I thought was going to be, I thought Puello Martin was going to look a lot more like the way Lamont and Tank looked, more
mm,
tactical, more downloading. Puello Martin was them dudes was in there fighting. I was very very surprised. And a Gary Russell
yeah,
Valenzuela, Jose Valenzuela fight,
Venezuela. Yeah,
that shit was not a street fight. It was an action pack. So the transition from those two fights to the first 3 to 4 rounds of the Tank Lamont Roach fight, I'm sure that the commentator, the crew is probably trying to reassure the audience,
yeah,
that this was not going to be a step down. Things were going to liven up, and they
yeah.
did, and they
And
did.
it
So
did, it
I
did,
understand.
it
I
did,
understand.
it did.
I get where you coming from, but the commentary, the commentators are supposed to keep the crowd, the audience engaged. When the fighters aren't
Yeah,
keeping the crowd engaged, so
yeah.
I get what you're saying, but I hear
And
where they coming from also.
yeah, and so and for me, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I like high level high speed chess when it comes into that. Like I don't like some boxing enthusiasts don't like it, but and you were talking about you thought that Tank got outclassed, which I would um push back on a little bit, only because is that I'm giving a lot more credit. Well, I think we are. I think I'm giving a lot more credit to Roach because um I didn't think that this was necessarily a bad take performance. Like so a lot of times like if a fighter is training is off or like doing this, but his speed seemed to be there, his counters seemed to be there, his footwork was
You
there.
right.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like it wasn't like this was like, oh, this was not a bad tank
It
that we
was just a
saw
really
in the
good
ring.
Lamont. This
It
was
was
the
just a
performance of
really
Lamont
good,
Roach's career.
exactly,
Now,
exactly.
to be fair, I had only seen Lamont Roach versus Jamel Herring going
Exactly.
into
Yeah,
this fight,
yeah,
and that for
that's a
better or
bad
for worse,
impression of him.
or
Yeah.
so for worse, because you can't judge a fight off of one performance. That was the performance that that was sticking in my mind, the
Yeah.
Jamel Herring performance. So,
That's the
but
same with
yeah,
me.
that was not the guy that fought Jamel Herring. I mean, this kid is he just he brought something different. There was a different Lamont Roach that came
Yeah,
out there.
he's definitely evolved since that fight. Because based on that, right? Because like those are the only kind of like the opponent that is really recognizable. I didn't. I thought Tank around the fifth or sixth round would get rid of Lamont Roach. I'm gonna be
I was
honest.
thinking more like nine is the
Nine.
magic round kind of. Yeah,
Mm,
that's usually when Tank has downloaded all the data, quote unquote. He's picked up the timing, the rhythm, the cadences of the guy who's in front of him. But he's normally fighting very, very, very one-dimensional guys. Even Frank Martin, who isn't what I would consider a one-dimensional fighter, fought a pretty one-dimensional fight. Um, and Tank, it was just a fight of attrition where Tank's pressure just caught up with Tank. The other guys, Rolly and Ryan and pick a guy,
yeah.
those guys don't present much of a challenge mentally to Tank. Lamont Roach presented a mental challenge. And whenever you can make a guy think in the ring, you can really, 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 that's one part of ring generalship that kind of gets overlooked. Everyone
Hmm.
looks at the pace of the fight. Uh,
Yeah.
but the way this fight played out, man, it was very, very, very much of a thinking man's boxing match. And yeah, you could tell kind of that Tank had just not been he hadn't been forced to do that. He hadn't been
Hmm.
pressed like that. He hadn't been challenged in the ways that Lamont Roach was challenging him, you know?
Yeah. And that was good. Yeah, he fought a beautiful fight. Lamont Roach. I thought his corner was good. I thought they gave him good advice, kept him motivated. Um, little tactical stuff. For me, my view on the corner is that you've got less than 60 seconds by the time they sit down and do all that to get your fighter's heartbeat down, and to just kind of relax them, prep them. So like I only like one or maybe two tactical things of advice. I don't like a whole lot of information that you're giving that fighter to kind of like process with that time. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought that their corner was did a good job in doing that. So before we move on to the next segment, were you happy with the decision?
No, of course not. I thought that shit was egregious. I mean, look, Edeslandi Lara versus Paul Williams, in my to this day, and it's because I saw that fight live. To this day,
Okay.
is the worst boxing robbery that I have witnessed
Mhm.
personally. You might be able to go back and go back in time and look at some other worse ones, but that's the one that sticks out to me because I saw that shit live. I watched Laura beat the shit out of Paul Williams, and Paul Williams get given a decision victory. This wasn't quite that bad because the rounds were competitive, even though I scored the shit 116, 111 for Lamont
Really?
Roach. Because I gave Lamont Roach the
Well,
knockdown. I mean,
not,
there's no
but we gotta. I mean, but it's not official though. But so
I,
let's say that if you
fine, then
take
that
that,
116, 112.
okay. But did you give that because two of the three judges gave that ninth round to Tank Davis, and I actually thought that was one of his better rounds after
The
that.
round was the knockdown.
Yeah, the round with the knockdown.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
mean, it
not
was, I
so
mean,
it's but if you do then you probably have it closer to 115 to 113 for Lamont Roach.
I had it 8 rounds to four. I had 8 rounds to four
Eight
in
rounds
favor
before.
in favor of Lamont Roach, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I thought he got the
but
better of
that's
the
only one
exchanges.
different for me. I had it 7 to 5 or whatnot,
Okay.
which is 115 to 113 and stuff.
Yeah.
But
The
it was
decision was
good.
trash, though. Getting back to your question, I don't want to be
Mhm.
too long-winded here. That decision was trash. The other thing that some people are talking about, but not enough people are talking about, is that a fighter, you are not allowed to get work done in the middle of a round.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
that
and we're gonna talk about
now,
that right there.
okay. You
Yeah,
want to
yeah, let's
wait
do
or you
that.
want to just go now? I mean, because that
Now,
factors into the decision. Like the decision, Tank should have been disqualified in that round because his corner got up onto the apron, onto the can on the ring, and did work on Tank.
he did
They
that,
wiped
and
whatever
you're right.
the sporting waves out of his hair, or whatever the fuck was the pink
Let's
foam.
save that. Let's save that.
All right,
All right.
yo, like okay,
All right, so we're going to continue off of your last point, Boston Jared, and that is in the ninth round. Um, after, and this is one of the only kind of one complaints that I have about Tank Davis. I thought that he was looking at the referee too much. Like that was
oh
like
yeah, that's yeah,
I don't
that
know
too.
what that is, and that's kind of a mental flaw a lot of times in boxing. Usually they're looking for a way out when they're doing that. I'm not saying that he was doing that, but it was unprofessional. That was the kind of most unprofessional that I've seen him. But in the ninth round, after taking a jab, Tank Davis stepped to his right and took a knee. He took a knee. The referee, Steve Willis, started a count. You can see
Yep.
that one, two. Tank Davis went to his corner, put his head between the ropes, said something to his corner. One of his trainers came up with a towel, wiped his face, and did that. And then the referee let the fight resume without finishing his count and without acknowledging the knockdown. This is a abstract failure on the part of the referee, who I like Steve Willis. I mentioned
Yeah.
you right there is on the commission, who I think could have like said something to the referee and said like, no, you need to finish this count. in there, and I think that it was a super injustice to Lamont Roach on his biggest night. But Boston Jared, what say you?
Nah, I mean, nothing else to add to what you said, man. I mean, that shit was I was I can't remember any time I've seen something like that. I'm sure that
I've
there are
never,
examples of it.
yeah, I've never
Um,
seen that.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember that ever happening. I mean, it'd be one thing to not disqualify Tank for the mid round treatment, right? This getting worked on by your corner, which is illegal, which is disqualifiable as
Yeah,
far as I know. One thing I could see Steve is like, man, this is a big time fight, pay per view, blah 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 blah. I'm not gonna disqualify him, whatever. But to not count the knockdown and not say anything about the work being done, it really, really is a slap in the balls as a boxing fan who's been watching for a very, very, very long time. And for the people who haven't been watching for a long time, it gives them more and more of a reason to be skeptical and question the integrity and authenticity of the sport, man. So
it was crazy.
that was a real messed up moment, man.
It was crazy.
It was bad.
So like, and this is I want to kind of let people know. So taking a knee is something that fighters are coached upon to say that when you need a break, or you know, if you want to stop taking punishment, you can legally take a knee without having the fight stop. So what that happened, so Tank Davis knows that, right? You know, so like Tank Davis could have backed up. He actually could have just put his body outside of the ropes, and then that would have kind of did a little bit of pause of an action and stuff like that. You mentioned it in the earlier session, like you cannot get work done once a round starts. Even if you have a bad cut and then that they want to look at it, like a lot of times they'll allow you to like move the blood away so that the doctor can look at it, but you cannot
The
do
doctor
that.
has to do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The doc and the referee will tell him like, do not clean up the cut. Just like do enough so that you can assess the extent of the damage in there. So one thing is that he took a knee, which is an official move that you do, and at that time he was not able to take any more punishment from Lamont Roach, who was right there. So if Lamont Roach would have punched Tank Davis at that time, he would have been penalized.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
he would
yeah.
have been penalized in there. So Lamont Roach, he's been there. I know what to do when a fighter takes a knee and stuff like that. They're capitulating or giving themselves up. So I'm gonna step back and let the referee come up. Then he lets him go. He could have easily intervened and like stepped in, like not let him get treated for that, and then at the same time finish his count. I think that I'm sorry. I think that Steve Willis should be suspended for at least 6 months. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, okay. I'm not gonna. I understand.
That was
I'm not gonna.
egregious. I've
I
never
can't. It's
seen
tough to defend
anything
Steve
like that.
Willis.
So you let somebody take a knee, you didn't do
Nah.
a count, so the other person had opportunity to do damage. If something is in your vision that is not because that like I don't even care, and like I don't care, like you don't want to put that juice in your hair or whatever, and then you let a fighter
Right.
go and get treated in between rounds.
Yeah.
I mean, not
Steve
in between, but
Willis's
like during the round.
not Steve Willis's best moments.
I think, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that and I say it again, it's a failure on the commission, it's a failure on the referee, and shame on Tank Davis. That was unprofessional. That was amateur hour. That was
Yeah. Yeah.
amateur hour.
It was bad. It was bad. The only thing that I will say is that in kind of in defense of Steve Willis, who I like a lot, it did happen very, very, very quickly. Like it was like It was bam, bam, bam. He took a knee, he started to count, he jumps up, and normally the referee will send the one fighter to a corner, and then he'll go and he'll count in front of the other guy. During that time, the other fighter, once you've beat the count and you're up and the referee is giving you the standing eight, there is no restriction on where you can and cannot go. So if I get knocked down in the center of the ring, the fighter that knocked me down gets sent back to a neutral corner.
Mhm.
Neutral is the key word there, right?
Yeah,
He goes to a neutral corner. Once I beat the count, if the referee counts one and I jump up, I can walk around. Only thing I can't
absolutely.
do is run back over there and start fighting the other guy. So I can walk back to a corner
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and gather myself, which is what Tank did, right? Tank took the knee, the ref started counting, Tank jumped up and ran to a corner. That's not illegal. What's illegal is what happens then when his team gets up. So if you're Steve Willis, it's like, man, this is a lot of that shit's happening. But again, I'm making excuses for Steve Willis. Steve
You
Willis is
are
a veteran,
a
veteran
veteran.
official. I mean, this guy's been around. Not this is not his first rodeo. So yeah,
Yeah, this is
again,
not your first rodeo. And the thing is, so that whole process started. Like you said, he got up and you can walk around, you can go to a corner and stuff like that. But once he put his head between the ropes, he was talking to his corner runs up. And so I'm not sure if they would be suspended. I know that if a round is still going on and one of the cornermen enters the ring, that's automatic disqualification
yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff. So the fact that he was still outside of the ring, but come on, this is a high level. These are both world champions. Tank knows the rules and stuff like that. I thought that he panicked in that sense. And instead of just, if you do that, like why don't you wrap the person up? Get some time or like do some stalling tactics and everything.
yeah,
I remember when Floyd Mayweather was fighting Marcos Maidana and he couldn't see either. Like it was at one point, and he took a bit of a beating, but he circled around the ring. He bought his time. Everybody was like, "What's going on?" And he
yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
He never took a knee because he's a professional and he knows what the consequences of that. He came back to the corner and like I don't know if you remember, but this was the most panic I've ever seen Floyd. But he was in there was just like I can't see. And he just kept
Yeah.
on saying, "Do you remember that?"
Yeah,
And that,
yeah, yeah. I remember Keith Thurman taking his mouthpiece out of his mouth and running around the ring against Manny Pacquiao. I had never seen that before, but yeah, I mean, he didn't take a knee and didn't go and try to get treatment. I mean, yeah, it was you know, um again, not Steve. We're not we're beating a dead horse here. Not Steve Willis's best moments. And if he does get suspended, he's gonna have to he's gonna have to live with that. I mean,
it
it's
is
tough
like
to
listen.
defend, tough to
The
defend
only
what
reason I
happened.
say that is because he succumbed to the pressure of this is the fighter on the top bill. He knew who it was. If anybody else would have done that, I think that he would have made a count. He would have made sure that he wouldn't have got treated during that. I think that because he was sitting there talking like, listen, you probably couldn't hear it, but he was just saying like, you can't do that. He was sitting there like coaching and like telling him like, you should have continued to count. He was
He
just sitting there
told him, he
like,
told him, hey, Ted, you can't do that.
yeah, you telling Tank like, listen, you
Don't do it
can't do
again.
that. You are just like he know he can't do that.
Right, right. And Calvin Ford and Barry Hunter definitely know
Yeah,
that you can't do that.
and
So,
then
yeah,
the commentators were just like, what's going on? Like the crowd was sitting there trying to like process it because they were in shocking a little bit to see like Tank went down. Like this is the first, it should have been his first official knockdown ever, but it wasn't.
yeah, yeah.
But all right, but let's go ahead. We've talked about that. We've kind of expressed our derision with that decision. But so let's talk about the next steps for both fighters, which might include each other, but it might not. All right, so we've expressed our views on the fight, or we thought it was a fair decision or not. We talked about the egregious officiating that cost Lamont Roach a just kind of a world-changing victory. So what should happen next in your view?
Look, what should happen next is they run that shit back right away. The way Bivol and Better Beeve ran their shit back. What was it? 12 weeks
Mhm.
was that turnaround for that? That
Mhm.
is the type of turnaround we should see for this fight. Neither one of these guys. It was a pretty just straight up boxing match. It wasn't about a bunch of lumps and cuts and bruises that these guys sustained. Certainly not any more than Better Beeve and Beevil sustained in their first fight. I don't
Yeah,
see any reason why they shouldn't run this shit back in 12 weeks. And hopefully, with the amount of public pressure that you're seeing now, I mean, Tank is getting killed online, man. People are really letting him have it online. Hopefully, his position changes and they let him and they pressure him into taking a rematch here. Based on what Tank said in the post fight, though, he apparently they already know where he's going next, what he's doing next, and Lamont Roach is not in their immediate plans based on what Tank Davis said after the fact. Now, Shakur Stevenson came out on social media afterwards and offered Lamont Roach a shot at his WBC belt.
okay.
So maybe that's where Lamont Roach goes. I'm not sure contractually what his deal is. I think
Well,
he's a PBC guy.
maybe.
I don't know. I mean, we've seen PBC guys go over to DAZN and fight on Turki Al Sheikh cards. I mean, we saw Carlos Adames do it last week,
Now,
and we've
he's
seen
definitely
numerous other
willing to work
guys.
with them. So that was good. The turnaround for you was a little bit quicker than I thought, but just because Tank just doesn't fight that often. Um, I was thinking that no, they probably wouldn't do it though, but I was and it would be a little bit of a demotion, but I would have loved to seen this rematch or fight be a part of the Canelo Alvarez versus Bud Crawford or whatnot. I think
Oh,
that would just make that a superstar event. That's a part of it.
so
I just
I
don't
think
like,
that's
but
a little too
Tank has
much, even for
yeah,
Turki Al Sheikh. That's a
even
lot of money on one card there. Yeah.
it is, but and like Tank doesn't for like he doesn't fuck with Turkey and all of them. So it's like he would be the person that would kind of interrupt that. And then also the fact that Tank has always been the top bill, So even if and he claims to be the face of boxing, Canelo claims to be the face of boxing, so it would be a bit of a face off. But they could be co-headliners, in the sense, but I would think it would be massive. It's not going to happen. It's a bit of a pipe dream. I agree. I think that the WBA should if Tank does not agree to a rematch, they should take his belt away. And then if he doesn't want to fight for it, um, let Lamont Roach fight Shakur Stevenson in a unification bout. That you would have the vacant WBA bout and then Shakur Stevenson WBC bout. So this is only if Tank does not grant him an immediate rematch.
I'd be curious to see how that works out because it is a draw, right? So technically, but see, the other thing is Lamont Roach is not a 135-pound champion. Lamont Roach is a champion at 130 pounds. So
I'm
I
not giving
don't.
him the belt. I'm just kind of like making it vacant and stuff like that. In the sense that the commission can go in and based on if they agree that there were like
What,
these
extenuating
circumstances,
like circumstances or whatever?
yeah, that
Like,
was out there that kind of puts the fight in like jeopardy and stuff like that. I think that you could do like you have a referee that made an egregious mistake that we know implicated the results of that bout in there. if that's a 10-8 round, we can do the math. We know that
Yeah, yeah,
Lamar
yeah.
Roach
Roach wins. Roach
wins
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 a
that
majority
shootout.
decision. Yeah.
Exactly. Wins the majority decision. So that's my view on there. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Y'all cost that man his opportunity. And I want him to be able to have opportunity. But if not, if Tank goes right back into a rematch and he's because Tank was saying, like, yeah, I'll do it. It might not be the next thing. It might be down the line and stuff like that. I'm like, I, I don't know. I don't agree with
Yeah, it's just that's just whack, man. It's just whack. But it's the business of boxing, and it's definitely consistent with how Tank and the PBC have rolled. I mean, people thought that the Pitbull Cruz fight was somewhat controversial. I had Tank winning that fight pretty convincingly. I thought that Pitbull did a lot better than people thought he would. He was a
Yeah,
late replacement, and he made the fight competitive. And I know Tank hurt his hand and all that shit. But people thought that that fight should have got run back, and that was a UD win. I think Tank won that fight like 11 rounds to one on most people's scorecard. This fight was not that. If any fight should get there should be a rematch for any fight. It's this one. Now
absolutely.
look, if they have got a unification fight lined up for Tank, then yeah, I would say that the Lamont Roach fight should take a backseat to a unification. If it's Keyshawn Davis, Shakur Stevenson, or even Vasyl Lomachenko, even though I think that fight is past its I think that fight is spoiled milk at this point.
Yeah,
Lomachenko is going on 37 and at least a year and some change of inactivity. But I would still say that the Lamont Roach fight needs to take a back seat to any kind of
really.
unification plan that Tank has. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Tank
you're gonna
plans on
you're
some
gonna
circuit.
punish you're gonna punish Lamont Roach because he's being punished in this situation in that scenario.
Not necessarily. I mean, he can go get a big bag from Turkey Al Sheikh and go fight Shakur Stevenson. Um,
That's a good point. Okay, okay.
he can, even though he really doesn't deserve a shot at Stevenson's belt. He doesn't have any wins in the division, and there are other guys in line for that fight. But Shakur Stevenson seems to have a real tough time finding opponents, right? So I don't think anyone's gonna run to the WBC and say, hey, hey, wait a minute. I've been waiting for my shot at Shakur Stevenson. Why does this guy Lamont Roach get a shot? I don't see any reason why Lamont Roach wouldn't be able to get a shot at at Shakur Stevenson. If Shakur Stevenson is okay with it and the business is going to allow for it.
Okay. I think you're being nice to Shakur. So you think that is he has a problem finding opponents? I know a lot of people
Yeah,
that
I mean, he doesn't have the easiest time finding opponents. So
all right, but I mean, so I think overall this is where boxing has an opportunity to endear itself to the broader public, but it manages to shoot itself in the foot once again. As you talked about, this was a very good card that they put together. Um, I didn't think that the lead up to the fight, I thought it was super, super lackluster. I had to get one of my friends to kind of remind me, like, yeah, there's a all access type of show that they're doing and all this other stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah, it was bad. It was bad. It wasn't nobody was talking about this shit. It was yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody was talking about this shit.
it was so I think it puts a dent into the claim that Tank Davis is the face of boxing. And then this performance that he put on just kind of adds
Oh yeah, yeah.
validity
That
to
was
that, you know.
that's man. He's gonna be losing sleep over that shit because he told he's one of these guys that when you get him in front of a camera, you get him talking in these like podcasts and interviews. The guy really tells on himself a lot. And he
Yeah.
had said in one of these podcasts he went on to this interview. He really said something that really stuck with me, and he said that The one thing that, so I'm paraphrasing here, something that really, really bothers him, and one thing that he's afraid of is being made into a meme, right? Which
Mhm.
to me translates for the older people is translates really into embarrassment and humiliation. And
Yeah.
look, it's not like he got knocked out cold last night. But there are people, and it's a word that gets way, way overused in boxing, exposed. Last night, people are saying that he was exposed last night. People are out there making uh, music video, like it's all kind of shit on the internet. You know how the internet go. I mean, their internet is really, really letting them have it, man. Again, and this kind of goes back to the whole rematch thing. I hope that this pressures Tank into taking a rematch with Lamont Roach, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
All right, so we've weighed in on this controversy, and kind of given our views and perspectives on it. We want to, before we wrap up, we want to make sure that you do like and subscribe to our channel. That really helps us out, as far as making sure that the algorithm is in our favor. And we want to, acknowledge the two pundits who weren't able to make this. This was kind of a special, emergency, podcast that we wanted to put
This was an
together.
emergency. We never come on Sundays, but yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
But with that said, we are going to go ahead and sign off. This is your man, Professor Neil. I'm signing off for Boston Jared.
Peace.
All right, and thank y'all for rocking with us. This is the most erudite discussion on boxing on the internet.
It's
This is
not the
Block
most
Talk.
consistent, but we are the most erudite,
All
whatever
right,
that means.
yeah. All right. Peace out, and we
We
the
out of here.
Pundits are out.
Peace.
Yes, sir.